Alright, you've had a good taste of Limit Break for now, and now it's going to be time to continue to the next set, which will contain a bunch of good support, which you can check out I believe the analysis for the set 6 will go up just a day after this video, so you can check out what's in there. But before we go on into the future, let's take a look at what are the must-haves from this set. Quick thing before we get into this video, very soon on August 1st, on Saturday, we will be doing, of course, the usual pack opening stream for set 9, the first Break Ride set in the JP server, as well as set 6 for the global server. We'll be opening some packs as well, so if you want to join the hype, just like every month, it's always a crazy festival of new set hype. I really recommend that you guys check it out. I'm probably going to be streaming as usual 8:30 a.m. CEST and on August 1st, so you're gonna catch the pack opening live. We also do like a new set analysis on Twitch as well, and then we basically just like, just do all of that. It's really exciting, so I recommend checking it out. Link to the Twitch in the description. But now let's get on with the video. So we got 4 new clans in set 5. Golds, Narukami, Angels, and Great Nature, and they all have certain cards that will come back in future decks for the clans, both in the short term as well as in the long term. So we're going to talk about some of these short term, long term cards and whether you should be crafting them or looking at them or not. So, of course, PGs, for now they seem to be pretty universal, although in JP it seems to be that we're going to be getting archetype-specific PGs that work differently. So if you haven't heard about this, so the current PGs, they basically have the condition that when you would, like, basically, when you're a 3 and your opponent has a crit, it still checks. Like, even if you wouldn't go to 6, if you go to 5, it still activates. Whereas the new PGs will only activate, apparently, when you would go to 6. So that way, when your opponent attacks you with a crit when you're on 3 damage, you will just go to 5. So that is basically meant to help the Break Ride decks that are coming up in JP so that they don't get gated by their Limit Break. So in like Liberators, for example, coming up in the future, you might not need the old mark, but this will definitely come back with some decks that, don't care about being gated, that don't run Break Rides, for example, in the future. Then Din Drain will actually be a pretty big component in the future. This card will come back a little bit in the Break Ride era. We had this one very short period where the trial decks came out and the main set did not for the Break Ride era. And Gold Paladin basically had the Liberator Gancelot, which is the Break Ride that gives 3 units 5k, and the Vanguard plus 10k when you ride on top of it. But you would run that with Garmor, and then Garmor would Superior Call something like Din Drain, and then you can apply the buffs after he Superior Calls. So that was an interesting build, and Din Drain was a big part of that. Din Drain will in general come back, because Soulblast 1 to draw is very good, and while it will get a Liberator replacement, when the deck goes away from Liberators in the future, this will come back as well. So whenever, the game stops being archetype specific, basically. Gareth, of course, for as long as Azel is relevant, will be relevant. Silverfang Witch kind of already falls off. Some people still use her, though. Apart from that, these cards, like, this card, Blessing Owl, doesn't really come back. It, like, gets incorporated into Duke for a little bit, just to help him, like, hit over cross-ride numbers, because, I mean, he's 11k otherwise, so that kind of is a use for this card. Self-Damager is, of course, a must-have. I'm assuming anybody that plays Golds already has them. This Sagromor comes back in Platina Azel. We've seen a lot of Japanese lists running this card as, like, just dish 1, draw 1 to draw into PGs, draw into pieces. It's always good for that. Vivian, interestingly, does not really come back. She kind of gets just thrown out after we get Platina Azel because you need space for the blasters, and that's kind of unfortunate because in theory she's a good card, but she just doesn't really, just doesn't sustain herself. But she's still used in lists until we get to Platina Azel, so like, whether it's Azel or Duke, it is used, so that's something to look forward to. Lopier is still used a little bit, but again, been kind of dropped from Platina Azel lists, but it could come back in the future. Trip is still used very much so, because the deck gets even more counterblast expensive later on, so Trip will be a must have. And it kind of will come back to some extent in the future. In, like, I think in Liberators, they have their own countercharger, if I'm not mistaken, but maybe they don't? I can't remember anymore. Like, my memory is getting a little bit sloppy here. But yeah, then of course Bowmains, if you need Azel, if you need Criff, you need Bowmains. These cards outside of Self-Damager, not really, not so much. Azel itself, of course, is going to be still coming back, because Azel not only gets Platina now in set 8, but it's also going to be getting Raven-haired Azel in the future, and then Azel Scissors in the future as well, and all those cards still, I believe, need Platina Azel, regular Azel. Blonde Azel, let's put it. So Azel will still be a good card in the future. The Azel archetype as a whole just gets a lot of support throughout the entire history of Vanguard because it just, I guess Bushido just likes it. So that's that. Pelennor never gets support, but it's always like a nice random card to just like squeeze out a win out of. So it is a good card. It is still run in Platina right now. Whether it will be run beyond that, like in Liberators, I don't think so, because I'm expecting that, you know, they're going to be quite archetype specific from how things are looking, so that's something to think about. Garmor, as I said, kind of comes back in that, like, Break Ride Garmor build, but that, like, was, again, that was a very timely deck that won't really exist in Zero, I think, because in the TCG, like I said, we got the trial decks a good bit before the set came out, whereas now you're going to get, like, you know, Ganslot will be incorporated into the set. There is no trial decks, so that's something to think about, whether Garmor will be worth it or not, so I can't really tell you right now. Like 13k attackers and like Sagramore, like these kind of like flexible cards that just like gain power, they always kind of come back, but I'm assuming we're going to get archetype specific ones for those too, so maybe not so much. Even for Agravane, you know, just the Mega Blast, I don't think it's going to really come back. So that does it for golds. So generally, like the run through is Azel, definitely very important, and then self-damager is important. Trip, definitely very, very, very important. Dindrain will come up as well. I didn't talk about Nimue. She doesn't really come up that much. Like, she's kind of run as like when you have 1 or 2 slots in your grade 1s that you need to fill up, you can put in Nimue. That's about it. So not really that necessary. Okay. Moving on to Angels. We're going to take it in order of clans. So, Angels here. As you can see, I don't have much for Angels in Global. Oof. The no-CLs, man, I have like SPs of this one in JP. Grade 1 no-CL will come back. Oh, and it will come back a lot. I think this might be, if you're an Angel player and you plan to play Angels in the future, this might be the card that will last you the longest in the entirety of the game. Not only, like, this will not be played that much in, let's say, the Break Ride era with Celestials, but then it'll come back during, G, like, basically for both Gavrail and No-CL. And I remember last time people were arguing, like, oh, this game isn't even gonna go to G, what are you saying? It's definitely going to G. Like, they wouldn't be showing us a schedule of, like, hey, here's 8 months of Break Ride, we're gonna be probably going to Legion Mate after that. Legion Mate doesn't really last that long, and what comes after that, that's G. So, I'm pretty sure we are gonna go to G. It would be pretty silly for them not to, due to the sheer amount of players, including myself, that feel more nostalgic about G than the original series, and feel more attached. Like, I've played since 2011, since the game began, but I personally am much more attached to G, and I know so many friends that started the game in G, and they have no nostalgia or no attachment to, like, Blaster Blade, Overlord, all those units. They're just like, no, I mean, I'm more attached to, like, Night Rose, or, like, Blade Master, or, like, you know, whatever else, Victor. So, we're definitely going to G. Sorry, that was a tangent, but, like, I 100% really feel that we're going to go to G. Unless this game really, like, fails and just self-destructs or something, and it just becomes, like, not profitable at all for Bushiroad Game Studio, which I don't think it will, because it has been very much profitable. I really think we're gonna go to G. There's no reason not to. So, no-CL, gonna be very important for a very long time. 100% worth the investment. PGs, you know, PGs are PGs. Ergodiel Right Chain, not so much. It already isn't really used that much, and it's gonna be just falling off as time goes on. Grade 1 ponies, must have. These will be tournament rewards if you don't want to craft them or pull for them, but grade 1, Pegasus, super important. Very, very, very important. 8k vanilla, not so much. Like, these cards, not really. Self-damagers, yes, for as long as we're in Limit Break, will be important. Grade 2 no-CL, again, gonna be a must-have. Keep in mind, we're gonna, like, G prints a no-CL archetype. A whole no-CL archetype that has a grade 3 no-CL and a grade 4 no-CL. So there is a lot of no-CLs to be used, let's put it that way. Armoros is a 4 of in Metatron, so this will be a definite must-have for Angel players. She kind of falls off, but she will still be used in future decks as well, so she's definitely very nice. We already spoke about the, about the Ergodiels here. Then, looking forward, of course, grade 2 Pegasus, a must as well. The Pegasi, like I said, they come back basically all the time. Like, every build that can regularly, or like consistently rather, stack up cards in the damage zone will be using the Pegasi. It just goes without saying. 10k vanillas might, depends. We're gonna get archetype of 10k vanillas anyway. Self-damagers, yes, as I said before, definitely necessary. Shamsiel keeps being good for quite a while. She is like the main backup grade 3 for Metatron as well. And she comes back here and there towards, like, I think even in Limit Break era, like, people use her with a Break Ride. I think I remember that being the case. And so she will definitely be used here and there. So Shamsiel, if you have her, is a great pickup. Whether you should, like, dedicate everything to crafting her is, like, if you want to play Metatron, then yes. But you can go with her. Like, even if you have like 2 or 3 copies, you can still use her without necessarily like pouring all of your materials for her. I would say having Metatron is a bit more important, but they both do different things. That's the only thing. Kyriel. Kyriel is used right now and will be used until Metatron sadly falls off after that, because the deck kind of goes in a new direction. Instead of being like superior call from damage and kind of push damage with that, it's much more of like this, okay, I'm gonna like just swap a bunch of cards on my turn and just overpower you with big columns, like if you didn't set up intercepts kind of play. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Airwood we already spoke of. A bit too slow, just a bit too slow for the game. This is kind of like the general opinion, I would say. And then Hermieres is actually a very important card. This might fall off in Celestials, but for Metatron, this will be a must, because this is the only way that without stand triggers, you can do multi-attacking in Angel Feather, and that is amazing. You go first. If your opponent's on grade 2, you can bash with this unboosted and then call something out of damage, and then your Pegasi get power-ups, and then it's really, really good. She's a really great card, like, without a doubt. So she's definitely a must. So let's just put it that way. And Calamity Flame will come back a lot, actually, just like the Pegasi. Plus 2k every time you put something into damage is pretty good in Angel Feather. So, to wrap it up, the must-haves are both the Nociels, both the Pegasi, Self-Damagers, Armoros, and basically Shamsiel. Not so much Kyriel as much as I like her, but not really. And Hermieres, absolutely, and Calamity Flame. So that kind of wraps it up for Angels. Then let's look at Narukami, one of my favorite clans. Just like Angels, actually. Those are both some of my favorite clans in the game. That, especially as the game progresses towards future seasons, will become more and more of my favorite. So here, there is quite a few interesting, quite a few really good cards, actually, that keep coming up. Of course, PG's very important. Ryan comes back all the time. Whether this will be, like, I keep saying these, like, you know, Eradicators and Liberators and stuff like that. If you've never played in the Break Ride era, that might be confusing to you, but they're just very archetype-specific decks. And they basically, a lot of their effects say, if you have other Eradicators or other Liberators on the field, do X and Y. But if you have archetype cards, then they don't do those effects. So that just might, like, it just becomes very, like, xenophobic. That's kind of the word that we used to describe that era, where, like, Break Ride era is very xenophobic and it's very archetype specific, so it doesn't really like these, like, generic cards that do good things. So Ryan, while it's a generic card that does something amazing in Sealing Intercept, it keeps coming back for, like, Vermilion, for Dungaree. In the future, I think it'll come back as well. So it's gonna be a great card. Rising Phoenix will, I want to say, almost always be used. In the TCG, this was teched into Eradicators, this was teched into even Brawlers at times, like, I think it was even teched into early Vanquisher, you know, so, like, until they got a better draw card, they basically always run Rising Phoenix. It's just a Soul Blast to draw card, it's always nice. 8k Vanillas are still good. Stormy comes up in Dungaree especially, because Dungaree does Effect Retire. Any deck that can do Effect Retire will want Stormy, I would say. Not sure if Eradicators will, but for the most part, this will be a good card that keeps coming up. So definitely a very good common. Self-Damagers are good as well. And of course, Helena pairs up with Vermilion really well, because you technically hit 3 times when Vermilion hits, if your opponent doesn't PG. If they PG, then it hits twice, but you can use, for at each hit, you can use a Helena, which is very, very nice, actually. So a cool little interaction. So quite a few must-haves already. Let's skip over these. Garuda, definitely. Countercharger, very important for the blood. Oh boy, that's going to be super important. Let's put it that way. Then Desert Gunner Shiden, just like Ryan, very important. Death Scythe will be used quite a bit. There are better retires as the game progresses that don't cost counterblast too, but for now it's going to be quite important and quite necessary, I would say. Grade 2 Jin will be used until set 8, because then you get like Dungaree specific 12k attacker, Vermilion specific 12k attacker, so this kind of drops off. 10k Vanillas do come up here and there. Self-Damagers, of course, for any Limit Break deck are pretty important. And then Vermilion, of course. Vermilion is a great card. Vermilion pulls his weights, let's say. He really does put in a lot of work, and Vermilion, you know, being able to clear the front row, one of the very few units in this game that can attack the front row all at once, is very, very strong. So this card just, it will still be important, whether it's as a tech or, you know, it's going to have the blood, and then in the future it'll have its own legion and a specific like Vermilion-esque stride, so it's gonna be important, let's put it that way. So even though, you know, it doesn't get too much support, it does come back, so I would say Vermilion is a must-have. Dungaree as well, I completely forgot I have a SP Dungaree in Global. We'll get Dungaree Limited, which many people say is the better Narukami deck, so this is definitely going to be very, very important. So if you have Dungarees, like I know some people complaining like, oh my god, I've pulled 6 Dungarees, I hate this game, like, no, you will be thankful for those Dungarees when Unlimited comes out, trust me, that deck is really, really fun. This card doesn't really come up, the like Goku clone doesn't really come back. The grade 3 Jin, sometimes, depending on like the deck space. Like this is still played in both Dungaree and in the Blood, but we'll see if it holds up into the future, but for now, of course, it is a good rare to have. Thunderbreak sadly doesn't really last too much. This is used as like a tech Voltage Claw, sometimes I see it, and that's kind of about it. Same with this, 13k attacker when boosted is also used every now and again. So yeah, that kind of wraps it up for Narukami. And now finally, let's take a look at Gureitonicha. Oh, not Bermuda. Not Bermuda. Let's go back. We've made a mistake. Great Nature. Let's take a look at what is being used here. So, Duckbill will come up for the entire history of Vanguard. Great Nature never becomes archetype specific. Never. That's why a lot of these cards for Great Nature will actually stay good forever. Because Duckbill is basically used throughout Limit Break, Break Ride, Legion, G, literally forever. Duckbill is just amazing, basically forever, because it's just an extra draw. So Duckbill, while it is a must-have, it is a tournament reward in the future, so you can save on crafting this and just get it from the tournament exchange instead. So I would recommend to wait for that if you didn't pull them. PGs, they don't get an archetype-specific one, so why not pick them up now if you like Great Nature. Stamps the Otter actually falls down in use over time. This actually is used a lot in this first wave of Great Nature with Leopold and Lux, but when Polaris comes around, it kind of drops off really, really hard. It doesn't really get used anymore. You want to be retiring stuff for the extra draws and stuff, so yeah. Lux Chain falls off, just falls off, unfortunately. This is used as like a one-of tech sometimes. Hamske. This is definitely used. Hamske comes up, especially the grade 1, still gets used a fair bit, even in Polaris. And then we'll see with Reverse Leopold as well as Chat Noir whether it gets used. I would say it might. There will be another amazing grade 1 coming up that kind of like does a similar thing like Duckbill, except it searches you a grade 3, which is going to be very, very useful. But we'll see if that takes the spot. Tank Mouse comes up here and there. It does come up in some decks, I believe, during... What was one of the nice things in Leopold Reverse, I believe, was that you could use Tank Mouse to rest him and give power-ups, and then you just lock him for the Leopold Reverse effect. So that was actually used, I believe, in the Break Ride era. Then we have Compass Lion, just being an 11k base that retires something in proxy or unretire effects is pretty good, so I would say yes, this is a must-have. Lamp Camel comes up here and there, but it's one of those, like, these on-hit combos to draw, they come up based on if the deck kind of lasts a lot or not. So the moment it does, you drop these cards off. If the build doesn't, then you can put them back in. So that's kind of, it'll depend. It'll just depend. Because we don't know how they're going to nerf or buff cards. Like some cards that did Counterblast back in the day might lose their Counterblast with the buffs that Game Studio likes to give. So we'll see about that. Binoculus comes back a lot, so this is definitely a must-have rare. Binoculus, Barcode Zebra, surprisingly doesn't really come up that much, despite being a free +1. Tanky Vanillas, of course, might. Self-damagers, Hamskes we already spoke of. Leopold, yes, actually. This will come up quite a lot because Leopold will be a great rearguard for Polaris to keep dishing out, like, extra power. And then it's also going to be a, you know, it's going to mesh somewhat well with Leopold Reverse, being a cross-ride and all. And well, usually you want to break ride it over Chat Noir, but you can still call this as a rear for the power-up, which is pretty nice. So, Leopold is pretty good. Will come up. Lux, you can ignore for now. Once Polaris comes up, you will not need him anymore. Same kind of goes for Bison. Isn't really played. Kangaroo as well gets dropped because Polaris does it better. So that's another thing to think about. 12k attacker, of course, still comes up. Grade 3 Hamscale already isn't really run, so that's kind of the gist of it. So, yeah, that's basically, again, to wrap up, the must-haves here, I would say, are Duckbill, the PGs, Hamske, Tank Mouse, and the not Polaris, Jesus Christ, Compass Lion. Lab Camel, maybe? I wouldn't stress about it for now. You can craft it later if you need it. Binoculus, and self-damagers, of course, Grade 2 Hamske, Leopold, and that's about it. I would say are the kind of must-haves for set 5. So yeah, that basically wraps it up for what I think are the must-haves for this set. So if you're planning to build these clans in the future, and you haven't made everything yet, you might want to start like estimating the kind of like crafting projects you will be doing in the future when they get support, such as when Polaris comes out for Great Nature. So that's just something to help the community in terms of which cards you should be looking out for in your collection. So hopefully this video helped you guys, but on that note, that's going to be it for me today, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.